welcome to Night Clerk Radio, episode 106, where we are doing today a bit of a late spring cleaning of our Discord. This is a semi-annual tradition now at this point, because every 6 months I run out of show ideas, so we do this instead. But yeah, so, you know, we have our Patreon Discord. People post a lot of great links, a lot of music, take care of some of that crate digging for you. And we like to go through and just, here's a bunch of albums that were interesting, and this is an opportunity to talk about them. So doing something a little different. Normally I hate people to feel left out or like that I didn't see their message or whatever. So traditionally, I think especially the last one was really egregious. I would just go back like 6 months to just grab every album that looked remotely interesting and try to talk about it. That has a bunch of logistics issues. Like, first of all, you just can't really talk about the album. It just becomes like, yeah, it's vaporwave, it's good. Next. And like, you know, what's the point there? Yeah. Other than highlighting it for that artist, of course. You know, any signal boosting is good. But also there's just logistics, like in order to accommodate linking everyone's albums, you run out of like your character limit on like YouTube descriptions and podcast descriptions and stuff.
Aww, yeah.
So I think on the last one I had to like put like 2 extra comments that had all the albums. Aww. Anyway, yeah. So this time around just went for a very focused list. We each picked 3 or 4 from fairly recently, like last month or so worth of posts. I just hope the idea is that we can talk about them a bit more. Still probably won't have like samples and stuff. Maybe like an outro sample, which you can check in the show notes, what sort of track I picked. But otherwise, I think we just have, what are we up to, 8 albums that are pretty fun and really, really interesting. And I don't have a whole lot else to add other than to start talking about them, unless you have thoughts on the Discord spring cleaning process, Ross.
I mean, that's a good point that we have to curate somewhat, because there are a lot of really great albums that are listed, a lot of great music on our Discord, and you really just have to be a member of the Discord to see all of it. But these are the highlights, some of the best stuff we found, or that other people found on the Discord and shared. So
yeah, I think it's mainly just talking about the albums fairly. I think one of the more recent examples of that is that Hot Takes Volume 1 compilation album we did, where some tracks is like, yeah, it's really great vaporwave. Next track. And I feel bad. Yeah. We're like, yeah, it's a cool sample. I don't know what it is. Next track.
Yep.
Which shout outs to some of the artists like iClick and a few others who did leave comments or send me messages of like, hey, this sample is actually this piece of music or whatever. So I always appreciate that sort of feedback and that people listen. It's really helpful. And yeah, it's really cool to learn. But Discord album time. Our first album of this episode is Pulsating Liquid Chloroform by Kagami Smile on the Emerging Technology label, which, is it my understanding this is like an Infinity Frequencies project?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was originally posted on Infinity Frequencies Bandcamp page. And yeah, it's his new their new label. So
okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if Kagami Smile is Infinity Frequency.
Okay.
Or if it's a separate artist that he found. So
it would be in vaporwave tradition to start your record label with your own alias.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would guess so. That would be my assumption, but it's not canonical yet. It's not. It's not.
You're right. It's not on the vaporwave Wikipedia.
Yeah,
and it's not real.
Yeah.
So this album is, man, I was really surprised because I kind of had Infinity Frequencies in my head, which I always talk about for their like, you know, more synthwave broken transmissions work. And this is like really cool, frantic ambient electronica. Like it's this weird mix of ambient and frantic.
Yeah, I was reminded a lot of like IDM music from like the early 2000s, like Square Pusher. I got some vibes from that. Yeah.
All right, we've got a Square Pusher streak of 2 now.
Look,
Square Pusher mentioned.
Yeah, Square Pusher's a good artist, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah.
No, I think like it's funny. It's definitely not stuff I normally listen to, but I kind of got it. I think because it caught me off guard. Like it was very surprising, and I just was expecting more broken transmission stuff, and to get really. I'm curious to see if this is what more on the album or on the label rather sounds like. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is just a particular debut. So is this the only release then on the label so far? It looks like
right now, yeah. I'm looking at their page right now. Yeah, no, this is also a really short album. It's almost like an EP. It's only 4 tracks, and yeah, it's very interesting. It's very dense, I think, with musical ideas in it, and I really like seeing vaporwave artists like try out new directions and try out new forms because you can really. So I'm really curious to see what Infinity Frequency follows up, because this is really nice, but it's so short, right? Like it's not like
yes and no. I mean, it is 4 tracks, but they are like 6 to 8 minutes apiece.
Yeah, that's fair.
So each 2 tracks does kind of almost make up a side of an LP.
Yeah, and thinking back of it, Infinity Frequency's always done shorter albums, so. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like it. There's even a little like music video for it on the Bandcamp page of like this weird liquid metal symbol like rotating in a desert. Mm-hmm. I get the vibe, like very alien, very weird and chrome and contrasting too.
Yeah, alien is actually a very good word because there's a lot of stuff that sounds like mechanical, not organic, but like skittering, like a lot of those like skittering synth effects.
Yeah.
I always think of being sort of horror adjacent. So Alien's an interesting mention. As soon as you said that kind of popped in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super cool project. Really curious to see what the label releases.
Yeah.
Moving on to our second album. I'll MC this a bit. Mm-hmm. We have Bastion Void / Endurance on the album by the same name. So Bastion Void Endurance being the artists, but also their name is the title of the album. I don't know why I'm making that so confusing. But each one, again, this is 4 tracks, but 2 of them are fairly long tracks at 10 and 16 minutes. So yeah, Bastion Void has 2 tracks, Kiosk, Mirage World, and Underneath and Starfront. Sorry, my font is so small.
Oh no.
Got my old man eyes.
Oh no.
Mirage World. Yeah, sorry.
No worries. This is a very precise and clean and like delightful, like ambient electronica. Like it is more ambient than, like dance music per se, but it's not like it's not the layered soundscape. It's very clean and like concise in a very the beauty of mathematics kind of way. I don't know, like that. Yeah,
it's interesting because like the album cover is kind of these like not exactly, but like Escher-like drawings of like confusing perspective or like things looping back around on themselves. Like holes in objects that can't really go anywhere or physically exist. Mm-hmm. Which I really like that kind of the artwork. Yeah, I loved this album. I bought the cassette basically after listening to the first track, which is only 2 minutes.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's en route from Japan right now.
Nice.
But yeah, like I just love this super clean, super modern, like really like airy and melodic kind of ambient synth, big and sweeping. A lot of it. This is actually, I guess a compliment in this field. A lot of it feels like really good video game. Ambient.
Yeah.
I don't know what, like Overworld or something interesting about it. I think Airy's funny because the side B liner notes recommend like riding Goku's flying Nimbus. Dragon Ball Z reference. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just like that like sense of exploration or like traveling that some of that synth brings.
Yeah.
And it's just very, very pleasant.
Yeah, no, I mean, like one of the comments of a person on Bandcamp who liked it said it reminds them of a 1989 Nintendo game, Shadowgate, the OST for that. So yeah.
Oh, interesting. I'm not familiar with that.
I have not played that exact game, but like that Nintendo chiptune sound, like it's not chiptune, but it's like,
it's much cleaner. Yeah. It's not going for that aesthetic, but like, a lot of the melodic construction. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's Yeah, I really like this. It's like made in a sterile, like clean room, like environment almost, like a guy in a.
I think it just feels that way because you listen to so much lo-fi.
Oh yeah, it's like, oh yeah, this is how.
This is actually what a hi-fi like what an album sounds like a modern music album.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I noticed that on two tracks where not tracks, sorry, two albums from this episode. One we'll talk about later. I was like, oh wow, this reminds me of like how much just dirty, crackly stuff I listen to, because it is so clean and pretty and airy. And I noticed that even on some like tracks on like the Hot Takes compilation, where it's all of a sudden like really super clean, modern synth. I'm like, oh man, this really.
I'm not like a big synth guy, but like, they mentioned like what synths are used on this album, this modular. I'd be curious to like if these are like older models to get like a certain sound, because I know like a lot of like synth guys would be like, oh, I want to use this synth to have evoke this particular era of synth music or whatever. So
yeah, or capture specific sounds. So we did the Alpha Chrome Yayo album, and then he was like pointing out like, oh, I'm really into all these like obscure Japanese synthesizers, and I really like how they sound. Yeah. So yeah, I think you definitely have your tools, right, as an artist.
Yeah, they say something about what kind of music you want to make, like what kind of theme.
JV 880 and stuff. Yeah.
Yep, those 808s for hip hop, for example.
Well, that's 808. Yeah. It's a different number.
It's a different number, yeah.
Speaking of the opposite of extremely clean synth, our next album is Millbrook Memories by CT57, synthwave maestro. We've talked about a lot with a new release. Came out just a couple days ago, or really last week as of recording. And yeah, he's got his style down, and he's very, very good at what he does. And I always really like it. It's very pure synthwave of just like static, playing some whimsical nostalgic track. It sounds like it's 10 rooms over on an old record player. Yeah,
or a cheap, car radio. Yeah. I think that's particularly like what he wants to do in this album, because like it's a sunrise over with like a water tower as the album art photo. And so track title is like gas station somewhere nowhere. Like it sounds like early morning car rides he was on. Like also like I really like how he's dipping into other musics, like the use of the really old like country music that's oh yeah, you listen to this in rural Ontario, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, I guess I could Google it in 2 seconds, but I'm pretty sure Millbrook is probably like a small town somewhere in that Providence. Yeah, maybe where they grew up, or maybe somewhere they like. But I get that. I grew up in a pretty small town in Western Maryland. It's a big town now. Yeah, but it's that like this feels like the most personal of his albums that I can think of. That's true, compared to like Spooky Playgrounds
or just the distant sounds of desolation, and stuff like that. Yeah, like this sounds like he's evoking his own memories of like growing up, or like driving around in this place and having to listen to like the radio on as you're going somewhere in the morning, or it's just dealing with all of that. Also, I think it just seems like a better produced album. Maybe this is just me, but like it feels like CT57 is improving their skills in making and mastering music, and like it just feels like it was a smoother listen than like previous albums. Like I like the other albums, don't get me wrong, but like yeah, I think I'm hearing the progression of CT57's abilities, and I was like, yeah, great, awesome, love it. So
yeah, I agree. I also think it highlights that like that personal element is like so important, because synthwave is really like can be like a tabula rasa kind of genre. Oh yeah. If you are just really like, if you're trying to do like lazy synthwave of like, I just want to recreate the first 5 minutes of Everywhere at the End of Time for a whole album, and it doesn't really mean anything. And I think it really does stand out when artists bring their own personality or their own interests or their own history or culture. And that's why a lot of the synthwave I really like is like CT57 or AB97 or like Naoko Koed and others, who like kind of inject their own personality and culture and experiences into it, instead of just like slapping static on obscure big band B-sides. It's the same as vaporwave. I mean, it's the same as any of these sample-based musics, right? You have to kind of create something personal for the other person to connect with, even if people like kind of treat it like meme sample music. It's not true, obviously. Well, we have 4 years of episodes about how that's not the case. But yeah, I always get really excited for his albums, and
Yeah.
Will continue to be.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to our fourth album, Office Jazz by Atavistic on the Bogus Collective label. And man, it's just really straight up classic lo-fi, late night lo-fi. Mm-hmm. The title does not lie. It delivers exactly what's on the cover and in the title. Yeah. And I don't know, like this stuff is just super chill and super fun, right?
Yeah.
So I think the Office at Night is like a really interesting sub genre of late night lo-fi that like work late kind of hustle culture. I don't know if that's what it's getting at.
Well, it was a staple of TV and movies for like 20 years, right? Like in the 80s and 90s, it was like a mainstay of like characters having dramatic moments in offices late at night, you know, like lawyer shows, cop shows, and like thrillers, sexy thrillers, you know, all kinds of things can happen there. And that created this whole library of soundtracks to draw upon.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know why the soundtrack angle is so obvious.
Yeah. Well,
it's just, I guess I got thrown off personally, just as a discussion point, is that so much of like corporate wave is much more of the upbeat daytime. And I don't know, like I was trying to like map that onto late night lo-fi jazz in like a fun way. But yeah, the movies, TV shows, Law and Order, late at night, wondering how they're going to get the evidence they need, or Columbo figuring out why his first season in the 80s was so boring.
Yep. Yeah. Or, you know, the Skinamax thrillers where, you know, you have an affair with your coworker. It's saxophone wailing as you rip each other's clothes off over the desk. You know? It's great. Part of it is also Office Jazz. Like this late night lo-fi style is just it's more pleasant to listen to than like a lot like the corporate wave and like the stuff that's very pristine and very like, this sounds like an industrial training video, maybe hitting too close to home for people who have to deal with that kind of stuff, you know, watch training videos for work or deal with kind of this. This is just fun. Like, this is just like fun, pleasant music to listen to. And it's weirdly, again, it's also in that same category as Mallsoft, where you have memories of something you've never listened to before. Like it sounds familiar enough. And like late night lo-fi is an interesting genre because it's only really popped off in the last couple of years. Like I don't really remember it before like 2020 or so.
I mean, the style definitely existed.
Yeah.
I think trying to call it something else, like this move towards late night lo-fi or classic vaporwave, is like a naming. But I mean, I think the genre definitely goes back to like 2014.
Yeah, but it wasn't like organized in this.
Well, I mean, that's how this all works, right? Yeah. Like there's a bunch of stuff that wasn't called vaporwave or whatever, and then somebody made up a word, and now we have to call it all by that word. But I think there's a bit of a recency bias too.
Okay.
Just because we have been listening to so much of it. I don't know. At least I have. It was funny. I was thinking about your comment on like some corporate wave not being fun for people if they do have to sit around and watch training videos or whatever. Whereas I have the opposite experience because, I'm just like a work from home stems nerd. So like I just sit around and listen to late night lo-fi while I'm working. So that's like my working during the day music. And then like corporate wave is my like fun, goofy, like, oh, that's a different take on office culture because I don't have to do that anymore. I mean, I've definitely watched my share of videos in my time in retail.
Yeah.
But like, it's sort of funny that like that coin is flipped for me, where I think of, like,
yeah, I'm just thinking about all those people who have to work in like big box stores that play like that kind of awful music, or like call centers, and you just have to listen to that whole music and that kind of stuff. Yeah. All day.
Big box stores are weird because I don't know, like the grocery store in my town, I think the music is like whoever gets in first that day gets to pick a channel on Sirius or like put something in, because there's no consistency. Sometimes I walk in and it's like 80s, sometimes it's country, sometimes it was like 90s me music. It was like YTMND stuff.
Wow.
Like the full versions of those songs, like was it like Rolling in the 90s or whatever? Like that type of stuff. That might not quite be the right track title, but people know what I'm talking about. But it was all that type of music. And I was like, it was all just the kids were in there that day because like it was winter break. It's like, are they just letting whoever comes in set the music?
Hell yeah, that's a good grocery store, man.
That's a great I'll get a part-time job there. I want to work 1 hour first thing in the morning.
Just yeah, you don't have to pay me. I'll carry almost the boxes around. Let me pick the music.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas when I worked at like a big department store, I was in the camera department of a huge department store. Mm-hmm. That was where I got my like 80s, 90s, and the music of the 80s, 90s, and today for the past 20 years. Oof. Because like it was all the same like 80s and 90s adult contemporary. So it was all the same, like Bon Jovi and Pink and Kelly Clarkson and that era, all that type of stuff. It's very a lot of Train, a lot of Ted Bachman. Anyway, God, okay, well, I got to move on because now I'm getting traumatized.
Oh, no.
Office Jazz, though, great late night lo-fi.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah.
We're moving into our fifth album, which is Cryptocracy by Sport 3000, which this album really stood out to me. I picked them because they all did, but I really loved the like Italian disco aspect and like synth pop of this album, like the really upbeat construction. It felt, we were talking about, again, the Alpha Chrome. Yeah. Some of that music felt like 70s Italian horror. This feels like 80s Italian horror. This feels like I'm watching like a never made version of Zombie 5 or something.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist. And there's just a lot of like, Italian disco, which it's tagged as actually.
Yeah, this is all like original music too. This is not Plunderphonics as far as I can tell. It's really like, it's just like legit like synthwave. The other tags are like synth pop as Italo disco. But yeah, it's very entertaining, like very fun synthwave. Like I really like it. Yeah, it is rather dark at times, but not always. Like, yeah. Very
energetic. It has a lot of that in that sort of 80s style. There's that very aggressive driving pulsing synth where everything feels like it's on purpose, like slightly ahead of the beat instead of like slightly behind the beat. So you feel like you're like being rushed ahead, and it's very forceful. It's very driving. You notice this a lot in like Carpenter soundtracks of the 80s and stuff too, where there's a lot of like pulsing, these driving arpeggiators and stuff that really, it just feels more urgent or something about it, I guess, than chill.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look up Sport 3000's other work. They have at least one other album up called Exposure, so I'm very curious to see.
Oh, they have a bunch of stuff. Yeah. There's a lot of variety though. I don't want to get the idea that I think the whole album sounds like that.
Yeah.
Like some of the later tracks, like Time Phenomenons and stuff, is a little more laid back compared to some of the earlier tracks, like Gateway Experience and stuff is like very driving through the middle.
Yeah, I really like this. I think I'm probably going to get it to make for my like synthwave playlist.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it just really clicked with me, like of that 80s synth soundtrack that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That vibe. Just really, really nails all those notes and all that sound and all that feel.
And that's something we cover a lot on Nightclerk. We don't really do a lot of like this
No.
kind of synth. Yeah.
Maybe I can look into it a bit more. We weren't doing as much EDM and future funk and stuff, but I found some artists that really work for me there. So yeah, maybe time for another genre reevaluation.
Oh my God.
Moving on to our sixth album, Somewhat the Same by Jameson Nathan Jones.
Oh man.
And
I love this one.
I know, and this is the second album that's like, oh, this is like actually it's like modern, very produced synth. But yeah, it's like ambient, a little on the dark side, pretty experimental. It's just like really cool soundscapes.
Yeah, it's a really amazing, it's classical, like it's new classical music, right? Like that's one of the Jameson Nathan Jones is like a legit composer, and there's some really interesting collaborations, like really good strings from Laura Masato. Yeah, I just really love this. Like it's really powerful classical, like new classical music mixing in with ambient and dark ambient even. So yeah, I'm definitely going to re-listen to this and probably buy it at some point next time there's a Bandcamp Friday. It's just beautiful music.
Yeah. I want to get caught up on some of his newer stuff because this is actually an older album. This is from 2022 and was recorded in an empty church in lockdown in 2020, according to the liner notes. There's a lot of improvisation and experimentation. Yeah. And then kind of shape it up into an album. Yeah. I just thought some of it was really cool. I don't have anything to add that you hadn't said already, but just that blend of, traditional instrumentation and synth, but in a neoclassical mindset is just something, we don't get a lot on the show and really, really stood out. Just really, really textured.
I mean, they're really, especially later,
really compelling.
Later on, it kind of invoked Godspeed You Black Emperor for me, at least in some places, like that build up and that droning melody and like, oh man, just great stuff. Yeah, I love this. This was a great find.
Yeah. I actually looked up who posted what, but whoever did, thank you.
Yeah.
I've not heard of the composer and it was definitely not known the album. So I'm really glad that we found it. It's really, really, really good. Moving on to album 7, Dessert Stand Sells Corn at Night by Your Lobotomy, at least by Your Discovery. I think it's a reference to something, perhaps.
Maybe an artist.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe an artist or something. I don't know. So, vaporwave is so hard to decode.
Yeah.
Sometimes. No. So this is an awesome, just like doom death metal album.
Yeah. Very sludgy. Yeah.
Yeah. Just sludge, but like faster paced, a lot of like noisy, hyper compressed, must be listened to loud. All the track titles are corn themed. We have kernel chip cookies, birthday elote, corn crumble, and it's all just death metal and grindcore.
I know. It's like you hit invert on Desert Sandstorms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you need like the opposite, if you want the like duality of man, you just like have this album and then your favorite comparable length Desert Sand Feels Warm at Night album.
Yeah.
And just maybe just shuffle them, like just alternate tracks or something.
Yeah, I started listening to this album without looking at the tags. I was like, okay, what's this? Okay. I was kind of annoyed at first. I was like, okay, no, I get it. I see you.
It's funny because this kind of music is somewhat nostalgic for me because I had a friend who was really into like gorecore and grindcore and like gross out metal in like, I don't know, like 2008.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, all he listened to was like Carcass and stuff.
Nice.
So it was sort of an interesting avenue to revisit that because I don't really talk to that person anymore. And like, as a result, it's not something I listen to much anymore. If I listen to metal, it's much more like stoner metal or more like ambient doom metal. That's not this fast or this aggressive. It's much more like sludgy and just,
oh yeah,
really drawn out and really low tempo and like ambient metal
album. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So this was a fun opportunity to like revisit that. I don't know, maybe it's time to go listen to like I Hate God or something. Mm-hmm. But overall, it's a fun album. I was not expecting it. It's amazing it wasn't an April 1st release, but good on them.
I'm glad they got it out at night.
Yeah. It's from earlier this year. Mm-hmm. So if that's what you're into, check it out. It's definitely, I had fun listening to it.
Oh yeah, so did I. Once I got it, the first minute, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was kind of curious about it. I kind of posed that because I was like, oh, this is not something, I don't know how Ross feels about this kind of music. So
metal is like an occasional thing. Like, it's like, I don't listen to a lot.
Yeah, but this is really abrasive metal. This is not.
Yeah. I mean, I like the fucking Clowncore album, so I'm
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah. It's nice to have it as every once in a while treat, you know.
Yeah, you got to mix it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, got to mix it up.
And that brings us to our last of our 8 albums we're doing, which is A New Look by Mnemonic 2000, which I sort of snuck this in on you at the sort of last minute. I had to because it was described by the person that shared it as being like Boards of Canada like.
Yeah.
And I know both big fans, which I get. But like, there's some interesting tracks that are like a little more driving, like Pixel Dawn and stuff, which is more not ambient. And I don't have like a good word for the genre. Just cool synth.
Yeah, this is another Twilight synth album, which is an interesting new genre tag to me. Oh, the only other one we've done is Data New Aesthetic by Windows 96.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely agree with the Boards of Canada comparison. But there is quite a variety on this album. Like, it doesn't like. Yeah, it definitely goes some places. And if you like that style of music, it's definitely worth checking out.
One thing that stood out to me about this album is that like every track feels so different to me. Mm-hmm. Like just from like timbre to what's being sampled to what instruments are present. It gives it like this like dream quality where there's no grounding, like not in a bad way, like in the same way like a Lynch movie has a dream logic to it. Mm-hmm. It just kind of feels like you're like floating between these ideas and you're not like grounded in too narrow a style. Right. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes sense, but that was my thing listening to this album. Like kind of every track felt like it was both simultaneously belonged on that album and was from a different album.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes sense because it's a debut album. So this is the artist like stretching their, legs, trying out different forms to see what kind of works or showing off what they could do. So yeah, or just like they're just pulling from all these different soundscapes and everything. Oh yeah,
for whatever reason, I liked it, but it was like, yeah, it was interesting that like lack of grounding. Mm-hmm. No, I think I liked it. Definitely liked each track on its own. So I'm curious to see if that continues to be a style of like kind of being a little jumpy or that'll settle down. I don't really have an opinion either way about what they should do, obviously, because it's their art. Definitely something to keep an eye on. I've also not really checked out this Unlimited Creation, which is a Russian vaporwave label.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the end of our primary 8 albums. Now there is one album that just barely, it only missed the cut because I forgot to copy and paste it from our Discord chat into our Google Doc. But you wanted to mention Intrusion Countermeasures. Electronics?
Yeah. Intrusion Countermeasures Electronics by Phasma. I quite like this. This is a very like EDM album with a very sci-fi sound to it. I quite liked it. And it actually reminded me of music I listened to years ago. Before I migrated, I started more in like house. And there was a time where I listened to psytrance music. And this reminded me of psytrance music in a good way. Okay. And I actually spent like, oh, it reminds me of this one album I used to listen to. What is it? And I went through all my burned CDs. It took me like an hour, and I found it of this mid-2000s album called Circadians by the artist Protoculture. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's like that. So it brought back some good memories of music I'd listened to. But yeah, it's a very upbeat, like you're a hacker penetrating, a dense, computer network. And it's a lot of fun. And it's, head nodding music. So if you like that sound, like it's if you like trance, if you like EDM, like this is a really good album to check out.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I guess I can talk about it a little bit too, because it is tagged as like Netrunner and Neuromancer, which of course are classic cyberpunk pieces. But the trance connection is interesting because it wasn't very long lived. I had like a very short trance phase when I was like, I don't know, 12. Because I loved that orbital track that's on the Mortal Kombat soundtrack.
Oh, hell yeah.
Halcyon, on and on, which plays at the end when they kill Shang Tsung and like all the souls are released from his imprisonment. And Liu Kang sees his, spoilers for a 30-year-old movie. Liu Kang like sees his brother and everything. Yeah, spoilers for Mortal Kombat. The bad guy loses. But and then I think it was also in the opening of Hackers. So I was like, oh man, I love this one track. I got to listen to all this type of music. And I did for like a year. And then I just forgot about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like I listened to this one trance album over and over again.
I heard something else. I was like, oh, now I listen to this.
Yeah, exactly. Like I listened to like the 1 or 2 trance albums. I was like, all right, I'm done. I've got trance. I'm done with the trance now. I can move on. But this reminded me of it. But yeah, so I'm going to really listen to it. I could
probably still get back into it.
I kind of want to see what's happened to trance in the last, however many years. So, but anyways, good on you, Phasma, for evoking those good memories. But yeah, it's a fun album otherwise too. There's actually kind of like a resurgence, I think. Well, I don't know if resurgence, but I've been noticing more and more of this style of EDM music popping up on YouTube and other platforms. So, it's so hard to talk about like something like resurgence because I just assume at this point that everything is made everywhere all the time. Yeah.
And like what I perceive as comebacks or resurgence is like I was talking about like late night lo-fi earlier and stuff, just happens to be like what I'm tuned into for that year or two.
Yeah. I mean, that's the real answer, right? Yeah. People are just making this. You just don't notice it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just sort of like this infinite production mode where you're just not tapped into it fully.
Yep.
For good reason. It's huge. Like we always say, it's hard to keep track of everything. So it's good to jump around a bit, but I tend to caution against making too many like genre trend claims.
Yeah, unless you're following trends as an industry and just insider or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, or like you really have been tuned in to nothing but late night lo-fi since like 2014, and exactly like these are the players that are coming in and out, and these are the styles that are changing, and people do this now and they don't do this now.
Yeah.
Stuff like
I think maybe the late night lo-fi thing is because of that festival, the Utopia District.
That definitely helped. Yeah. But yeah, I think she's talking about doing a Q&A about it, but like Luxelite's really good for that sort of information. Like she's like an insane memory was from the beginning basically. So it's like kind of like a really good source if someone were to do a really precise accurate oral history of like vaporwave. And we're way off topic of new music now, by the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a lot out there. And here's 9 pieces of it. So you're now at infinity minus 9 in terms of new music to go check out.
Hell yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for listening. It's always fun to rummage through the Discord and find some great albums to talk about. We're going to kind of continue that trend because our next album is going to be whatever new music we pick for June. So time to start doing some digging, doing some listening, and doing some looking and figure out what we want to talk about. Thankfully, as we just pointed out, there's always great new music coming out. So it's just a matter of doing a little digging and finding something that you want to talk about.
Yeah.
So if you like what we do and you want to hear more of it, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/nightclerkradio, where we have a couple dozen bonus episodes, essays, access to the Discord where you can suggest things, lots of great discussion in those bonus episodes and on that Discord. Really cool community. If you're into social media, you can also find us as at Nightclerk Radio, basically anywhere. Twitter, nightclerkradio.com. There's a Facebook. There's a website. Blue Sky, Instagram, whatever works for you, or nightclerkradio@gmail.com if you just want to let us know what you think about anything. But we always look forward to hearing from you. Wherever you do choose to check us out, if you can take a moment to rate, review, click those algorithm notification buttons, it helps out more than you realize. And most importantly, we always advocate building community. I really appreciated the Discord community that we built up, the vaporwave community at large, who's been like really cool and helpful and supportive of what we do. So for you and your communities, go out and talk to people about what you're interested in. And hopefully Nightclerk Radio or Vaporwave is part of it, and you can make some friends. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you so much again. Goodbye.
Bye.